How long have you been tattooing for? You did your apprenticeship with Jonathan Shaw. Lyle Tuttle had an interview where he said that was it for him. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this, man. And
thanks for having me on a cold and snowy day on this East Coast tour on my day off.
How long have you been tattooing for?
I started my tattoo journey back in 1989. Actually, if you really want to be fucking technical, has it been 30 seconds?
It's all good.
All right, if you really want to be technical, my brother and I, when we moved from Hollywood to Van Nuys, we went to the little grade school right there, and we were like 6, 7 years old. I'm older than my brother, Odie. He's also a tattooer. We would walk by World Famous Emporium in Van Nuys, and we'd steal like ice cream from DeDale's Jr., then we'd sneak into the tattoo shop. That was like a daily thing, like hanging out in this tattoo shop. We'd get squirted with alcohol and chased out and whatever, because we were like literally picture a 7-year-old in your shop.
Yeah, right.
Not like a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old, a fucking 7-year-old. And that place was just magic. Doc Dog opened it. He was like the first guy to open up a tattoo shop in the Valley. He was also the first guy to open up a tattoo shop in Vegas. A couple times we saw some naked chicks, and it was kind of cool. The magic was set then. Yeah, later on when I was a teenager, I got tattooed in Hollywood. I was too busy being a gang member and all that other shit to care. But then when I went to New York for graffiti, made a bunch of money, wanted to get tattooed. This is 1989. A lot of people didn't know that from 1963 to 97, tattooing was illegal in New York. You know, there was a hepatitis scare. That's the official story. There's an unofficial story that has to do with the Moskowitz brothers pissing off the health department woman. So in 1989 was right in the middle of all that, and you couldn't just walk into a tattoo shop, especially if you didn't know. Like if you lived in Brooklyn, you went to Mikey Perfetto or Tony Polito or something, and you knew. But coming from LA and being there, I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do? So I looked in the phone book, and it said like, Jonathan Shaw. And I was like, I remember this name from the Tattoo Time magazine that Ed Hardy put out. I didn't know who Ed Hardy was back then. It's just, they had these books, and they were in the comic book stores. So I found that, and I saw Jonathan Shaw, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's all biomech, early biomech. Now when you did the whole sleeve, so when you put the biomech in a tattoo,
yeah,
you kind of actually, that's the one he did, the first one.
Okay.
So you see all that?
Yeah.
Still there. I saw the Jonathan Shaw part. I was like, well, I've seen this guy's name before. He must be good. And because it was illegal and because it was Jonathan, you had to do this whole smoke and mirrors, meet me on the corner, call me from the corner, fucking know what you're doing. And Jonathan is just fucking abrasive like crazy. So I took Snake Eyes with me because I didn't know what to do. That shop was magic. It reminded me of the first shop. It didn't even take me fucking 2 seconds to know graffiti's never gonna get in any bigger than what it was at the time. I felt a calling. Real tattooers will know what I'm talking about when I say I felt a calling. Like the ghost of every fucking traditional tattoo legend, master, whatever, just slapped me around, said, you're our bitch now, so you're gonna be a tattooer. So I asked Jonathan, he said, fuck off on the daily, every day, fuck off. Like he wanted nothing to do with it. So that's how I started in 1989 New York, like with Jonathan Shaw. If you want to break it down, like if Snake Eyes didn't go with me, I probably wouldn't have gone through with it.
Put you in the right place, right?
Yeah, so when you look at it like that, you're like, you know, there's divine intervention, but there's also like, I don't know what the word would be for divine.
Destiny.
Yes. Sorry, I'm getting old. Like, the older you get, the bigger the word. If it has more than like fucking 3 syllables, you start fucking losing it.
I hear you. You did your apprenticeship with Jonathan Shaw?
Not an official apprenticeship, but you know, see, this is what these kids don't know is apprenticeships, they're not all the same. You know, a lot of people think like, oh, you have to do this and do that, or you're gonna do this, or this guy's gonna sit you down and you're gonna make needles for 6 weeks or some shit. No, if you got the calling, it just kind of like is really frustrating but easy. You know, when you do something that just all follows together, that's how the Jonathan thing was. But he laid everything out like, oh, I'm just gonna tell you a bunch of shit. I mean, he didn't even say it like that, but he just told me a bunch of shit or showed me a bunch of shit, and either I got it or I didn't. Sink or swim. But I didn't get sink or swim. Like Tennessee Dave's sink or swim was, he hung out in the tattoo shop in Captain Jim's. Tennessee Dave was a boat trailer welder. He welded trailers together to haul boats. And he was really from Chicago. But he did this in LA and he kept getting tattooed because there was lots of pussy around the tattoo shop. One day Captain Jim was like, hey, I'm gonna go to Mexico. Here, you've watched us long enough. Threw him the fucking keys and left for the weekend.
Wow.
So Tennessee Dave was a real sink or swim.
In the fire, man.
Yeah, so Jonathan taught me about placement. He taught me about traditions, and he taught me about who really matters in tattooing. I got to meet a lot of people. Introductions are more important sometimes than sitting around and doing tracings. If you get introduced to being introduced to Eddie, Bob Shaw, learning about Colonel Todd, and later meeting him, stuff like that. You get introduced. I got introduced to the original Pirates, from right off the gate. That was a good thing, because now there's more people in the pot that are just gonna abuse me. So it's cool. Gil, and Wando, and Randy, and so it was a fun time. It was the best time to start, I think, because if one word can fill up tattooing and learning back then in the late 80s, early 90s, debauchery.
So let's get into that, though, because...
Debauchery?
Not the debauchery.
Your clothes are still on.
Old school, how it used to be kind of mentality, how it was back then.
Well, I think it's in every industry. Graffiti now, you can buy cans that have low pressure, high pressure, and different tips, and a monkey can do graffiti. So it's the same. Everything's so much easier. Mm-hmm. I have this saying for when you're learning back then is you suck until further notice. You don't say when you're ready. You don't say this. It's when you start getting accepted by the elders, when they're like, hey, we're gonna go to dinner. Are you coming? Shit like that tells you you're accepted, not like, oh wow, look at all this anime I did this week with my fucking dildo, with my plastic colors, and hold on, and I have 6 arms so I can pat myself on the back a lot. Back then, you didn't pat yourself on the back. You were humble and you hustled, and that was it. All you wanted was money, girls, just to party. Right. And I've never been high or drunk, so my partying was even dirtier. Girls.
I hear a lot of old school guys say that that's it. Lyle Tuttle had an interview where he said that was it for him.
Exactly. That was it. Fuck it, that is it. I met my wife in my tattoo shop. I met my girlfriend in my tattoo shop. My wife's remarried, but the people that understand tattooers came into a tattoo shop, a real tattoo shop. They didn't come into a parlor or a fucking studio or, here's your cucumber water and can we massage your feet? Are you having a good day today? Fuck that. The only princess in my shop is me.
I told you earlier, I came in the 90s, the early 90s. Right?
Yeah, good time.
But the vibe in the shop when you walked in, a lot different than what it is now. You walked into shops back then and you were almost a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're...
Oh yeah, because you didn't know if you were going to get your ass kicked, robbed, seedy side of town or whatever. You had to earn it. But that was just it. That was part of the adventure. I don't think it would have been as special if I didn't have to go to the corner on a Sunday night and call Jonathan from the payphone and then meet him and then not even see the shop until he was ready to show it to me. That's what made all that special. It was like a 7-year-old kid again. I was just looking around and being all quiet. That's how a shop should be. There was this turning point, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but from what I remember, when the Chili Peppers played Saturday Night Live and Hanky Panky did that fucking armband on Anthony, Tribal just kicked open the door, and every college kid that wore fucking Doc Marten sandals and a little bandana crazy got tribal. And then every chick got a lower back tattoo and all the jealous wives called it a tramp stamp. But fuck that. That made our money.
Didn't even think about it that way. Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, that's what it is. Why would we call it a tramp stamp? We want more of those girls coming in. We would never degrade them.
What do you think changed the industry?
Well, it's always been changing, because when you came around the 92, my generation comes from the punk graffiti generation, the first one, and we brought all these crazy colors, and we looked for crazy colors because our palettes and spray paint was a lot different than what the palettes that was being used in tattooing. And I remember at the time, Huck had this Stay Glow set. It was this big, and they had all these pastels, so we were just oh, that's for us. And I remember hearing, oh, that shit's crap. It'll never go. And I remember I would have never trusted an old timer at the time to do graffiti because I wouldn't think he knew what was up, which is like the mentality of what's going on now is I was stupid and I should have gone with the people with more talent and experience. But then, you know, you do dumb shit, but we contributed to tattooing. If you can answer this question, if you want to learn how to tattoo, what do you have to bring to the table that we don't have already? Because we have everything already. We have more shit than we need, and you're going to be like, I want to learn how to tattoo because I can do it. Well, people have done that for 20 years. Well, I can do this on an iPad. Well, I can watch porn on an iPad. Get the fuck out of here. You know, you need to bring something to the table.
How are you going to change it to make it better?
Exactly. Or just what are you going to contribute a little bit, even if it doesn't make it better. You know, when Leo decided to mix Borneo with punk rock and make his own tribal, and it was very Borneo style, Leo did it mixed with punk rock. That was a contribution that made all tattooers money. These fuckers now are doing their little, like, whatever they're doing, stick poke, little lines, like they're not making the whole tattoo industry better as a whole. They're out for themselves. Jack Rudy's Flash didn't come with line sheets because if you couldn't draw that and make a line sheet, you shouldn't be tattooing it. You know, there was rules. I mean, not really rules, but there was like some common sense thing back then. And the traditional stuff, come on, people that fuck that up? You know how many times I've seen somebody do the American flag wrong? Blue field, white underneath it, red. Our colors are red, white, and blue. Like, if it doesn't have that, it's wrong. So many people put red underneath the blue field. They're stupid.
You said earlier about being into the graffiti thing. I mean, would you say that we're going to get into that, but would you say that was your passion in art?
That was my life.
Okay. And that's you.
And I'm talking all sorts of graffiti. When I was a kid, gang graffiti, like when we moved to the Valley, we lived in Van Nuys, and there's big BVNs. There was two gangs, BVN and the Cruisers. And BVN had these big ass letters and the V did this weird thing. And the Cruisers had like shit in a banner. And I was just like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen because it was on a wall and I knew it was taboo and not supposed to be done. And then, you know, the New York graffiti came out and we were just like, what the fuck is this? I was highly influenced by a guy named Zephyr and his stuff stood out to me and I just loved it. I started doing graffiti in '82.
I think what got me into graffiti when I was a kid was the movie Beach Street.
Ah, yeah.
I mean, that was like...
Remo!
That, to me, gave me the vibe that I was seeing.
Yeah.
It was legit. You know?
We do Beat Street references all the time, and people don't get them. Hook up our machine, and we're like, it's working. And people are like, what the fuck? Why are you singing Beat Street?
It wasn't the most...
That movie aged 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
Like, 10 minutes later, B-boys look different.
Yeah. You're talking about Jonathan Shaw and some of the other people you've been around, and I know that at one time you worked with Tennessee Dave and then Rick Walters.
Yeah, so what happened is 2002, Tennessee Dave did a shift at my shop. And in 2003, both Tennessee Dave and Rick Walters were out of a job. Like, Dave couldn't no longer keep West Coast Tattoo down on 5th and Main open, and Wanda Shaw had passed, so the boys, they sold Burt Grimm's. So Rick was out of shop. So people were like, oh, let's do an art show for them and all this other stupid shit. Here, let me do something where you can see me. They're exploiting them by showing themselves off. That's a big problem with tattoo artists. They just want to show themselves off. I said, do you guys want a job? And I tour a lot, so we're going on tour. And they jumped all over it. So for 10 years, I had both of those guys working at my shop.
Dude, so that was an amazing shop.
It was almost like another apprenticeship. Because when I came back to LA, I had the honor of working with Mike Brown, and I thought I knew everything. And then I had to jump right back into LA style. Getting any type of approval or praise from Mike Brown was like pulling teeth. He just, it's all right. Sometimes he didn't even say that. When it really sucked, he just like kept walking. You know? And I just wanted to know if I was doing it right. I didn't want him to be like, oh man, that's fucking dope. Nah, just... Oh, okay.
Nod of approval.
Yeah, just something. I got it. It's all right. And then the thing with Dave down in downtown after I opened my shop. By the way, when I opened my shop in '95, my shop's in Highland Park. 7 miles away was downtown LA, and 4 miles away was this old man named Tommy in Glendale at the body shop. Probably like 5 miles away was Bob Roberts in Hollywood. I called those three and said, I want to open up a shop in Highland Park. Is that cool with you? And they were all like, I don't care. Like, you're not across the street. That's all that matters. So Dave, like a year later, all of Dave's crew left. And he was alone. And I used to go down there all the time and hang out with him and stuff because I was just amazed with Tennessee Dave. I told everybody in my shop they had to work 1 shift a week there just to help him out. We all did that. They lasted about 1 week. I ended up being there for 2 years.
Nice.
On Wednesdays.
So you're talking
my day off I spend with an old man.
Yeah, but the amount of knowledge you soaked from that.
Oh yeah. That's how he became a good friend and a mentor. So you never stop having mentors in tattooing. Never.
The respect that you gave to say, hey man, I'm moving in here.
Yeah.
That is not happening now.
Well, no, of course not, because they don't have respect. They're like, oh, are you afraid of a little competition? I read some of these threads, and people try. I'm still the only shop on York. I will fuck you up.
See, because you got the old school mentality.
Some girls came in and were like, oh, we're going to open up a shop. I've known about that for like a month, and you're now telling me, and you brought me cookies? And I just put my gun on the counter and said, you're not opening. Find somewhere else. And like 2 days later, they came back and told Andrew, who was the apprentice at the time, who is now Hori Kuma out in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. They told him, yeah, tell Babo we're moving. I know. And he took the cookies and ate them, nice. Little fatty.
What really gets you excited about tattooing still? Like, what gets you up in the morning about tattooing?
Oh, it's a calling. I live it, breathe it. What people don't really understand is at the shops, it's more appointment now. So you know what you're gonna do, and blah, blah, blah. It's really, I love my clients. They're like cool as fuck, and they always come up with these like cool ideas that I get to create. When they just say, I'm just gonna show up and you can figure something out in the space I have this much amount of money. Like, they don't worry about the hourly or whatever. They just be like, I got some money, I wanna get something. And it's the same as shows. Like, you don't know what you're gonna do at a show. That's how it was in the old days. You didn't know what was gonna walk through the door, but you had to be ready. You couldn't sit there and be like, oh, I'm the cartoon guy, yeah. Or I only do single needle foliage with stippling. I do all that. A monkey could do all that. A monkey could do all of it.
And I look at your portfolio and I see
it's all over the place.
If somebody were to ask me what your style is, I probably
tattooing.
Right. I couldn't pinpoint it.
Yeah, that's what it should be. That's what these idiots don't know. They're like, oh, I only specialize in this. You just cut your whole fucking clientele down 75%. You're basically telling 75% of the people that you don't do anything but what you do.
Now, do you equate your longevity to not only your passion, but that attitude?
That attitude and raises Jolly Roger, like, fuck you, I'm here. I tattoo. That's all I want to do. I'm a machine junkie, loving the smell of green soap, alcohol in a shop. There's no Dr. Bronner's in my shop. There's none of that other shit. It's fucking A&D, green soap, Lysol concentrate to clean.
Mm-hmm. The day I met you up in the convention in North Jersey, I was walking around with Justin French. We were both saying, you don't hear any machines. And then we get to your area and we hear machines. I'm not going to knock the new machines at all.
I will.
Okay.
They're sex toy workers. They're not fucking tattooers. They're sex toy workers. I think, I get in arguments. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I get in arguments because they're like, are you afraid of progress? Are you afraid of... It's not progress. It's a fucking glorified makeup machine. You're going backwards and sideways. If you take the bloodborne pathogens course, which you should, it tells you the makeup machines of those design should not be used because you cannot clean the inner parts. So what they did is they just kind of compromised it a little bit and stuck like barrier film inside. It's still a fucking makeup machine. And a rotary, that's not the original one. That's it. That's all there is. It took me 35 years to suck at using these. Why would I start over?
I know that you are Inked Magazine Icon 2011.
Yeah, February of 2011. That was a surprise.
How was that for you?
Marissa did the article, and actually they hired one of my clients to take the photos. He's actually from Jersey, Tom Medevich. He's a Jersey photographer. He moved on to doing like $1 million car photos and shit like this, but he came out and did the photo. And when I asked, they said something like they did a poll, 60-something% of the people they interviewed about lettering and traditional and shit like this and dark shit, they named me as an inspiration. So I was like, oh, well, thank God for that. That was kind of cool. Nothing came of it. Inked Magazine has a convention in LA. They don't even tell me.
So let's talk about conventions real quick.
No. No, sure.
There's a lot of older guys that don't want to do them anymore because they've changed.
Yeah, of course they have. And honestly, partly my fault. When we first started Body Art Expo, they came to me because I was writing for Skin and Ink at the time, and they said, we want to put on an expo. Do you have any suggestions? And I said, yeah, sure. 10% or 20 booths are local and the rest from out of town. I thought that would be the best thing. Take the top 20 shops in Southern California, give them a booth for free, and then rent out everything else from people from out of town, and you'll have a nice variety. So he goes, so what are the top 20 shops? So I listed all these shops. 2 weeks later, they came back and said, nobody's interested in doing it, and they have enough conventions, and why didn't you put your name on the top 20? And I was like, well, there's people better, older shops, whatever. And this was 2002. And they were like, well, would you like to sponsor the show? Because you're the only person that seems to be honest. Everybody else was like, what are you gonna give me? This, that, the other. I sponsored it, and the first show, we had probably about 50% local, LA, Orange County, and then the rest was everywhere. We had Japan and Denver, New York. We had everybody. And 36,000 people paid to get in that weekend. It was like the highest grossing of everything. And we did it at the LA County Fairgrounds. So everybody was really psyched for the second one. That missed the call on the first one. Second one was just as packed. Lyle was there. Everybody was there. A lot of fun. And then it just kept going. But then people weren't winning that traditionally won because there was new guys. And that was the thing that we did, is at the time, Ink Slingers was the only convention, and we did ours, but these people couldn't get booths at Ink Slingers because it was filled. So we gave them a break, and then all of a sudden, all these names that are huge now were nobodies back. Well, they weren't nobodies, but they were good tattooers, and they started winning awards, and they became famous. It just kept going like that, and then those people got too big for our shows. So now everybody's all like, well, we got to do the mega shows and do this. So now all these shows are like that. So it's our fault because we did this big mega show, and we took it out of the hotel and we put it somewhere where, a lot of parking and family friendly, different food, all this other shit. So the old timers missed the hotel ones, probably because the hotel drinks were cheaper. We did an expo. We didn't do a convention. We refused to do seminars because we were like, we're not going to teach anything to anybody because you don't know who's walking through. We did an expo. So this is like a bunch of booths telling everybody, this is what I'm about. This is my stuff. Check it out. Make an appointment. Get tattooed. Whatever. The conventions were more like family reunions. That's why we never called it the Body Art Convention. It was the Body Art Expo.
I know you have a laundry list of, clientele that would be considered famous people. We won't get into that just so we're not name dropping or whatever. But
here's what's weird about that. I get asked that all the time, and I'm like, well, it depends on who you consider as famous.
That's a good point.
Because I've dropped names before that I've done, and people are like, the younger people don't know who the fuck they are. You're like, really?
I guess where I wanted to go with that, though, is, and I'm not saying you've peaked, obviously, but what do you consider to be the high point of your career so far?
I don't really consider a peak tattooing somebody famous.
No, me either.
Well, okay.
I guess where I was going with that is I didn't want somebody that's watching this to focus on that. I want to know what your personal, where you feel like this was the best experience I've had at tattooing so far.
I think the best experience I've had was when I fucked somebody up, meaning that I got so fucking cocky and so full of myself that I cut corners and I fucked somebody up, and he called me on it the next year. And I was just like, fuck. For the longest time, I carried around a photograph of that fucked up tattoo to shows, and that made me a better tattooer. I would say that was a low high point that I learned from. I'm cocky as fuck, but I don't cut corners on the tattoos. With our crew, if you do want something that's very detailed anime or whatever, I send you to Carl. Our crew, we're not out for just me. We're a big family, and we have somebody that will take care of everything. That's how that is. We're just arrogant. We're assholes.
Dude, that was an honest answer, man.
Yeah, that's the one. Because that still got me that literally, I remember doing that tattoo, and I remember just rushing through it because I had some chick waiting. That's how much of a dick I was to this fucker, and he had the balls to come back next year and call me on it. And I just, to this day, remember that.
If somebody were trying to get into the business.
Oh, we're not open. We're not hiring. It's just not fucking happening. We don't get into the business. People call all the time. They're like, are you guys offering apprenticeships? We're like, no. Fuck off. Nobody offers an apprenticeship. We don't want apprentices. There's enough slices in the pie as it is. You know what we need? We need motherfuckers who love tattooing, who study tattooing, that want to be counter people. We need professional counter people. We just need people that love tattooing, that are willing, you love it, you're doing this. This is a plus. This is something tattooers don't have enough time to do on their own. And if they do, they're not tattooing. So all those people doing their fucking TikToks or whatever, like, oh, well, here, look at my snake. You know, here, watch me do this on my iPad, and then smash, it's a tattoo. Like, you spend more time on that fucking video than you did the tattoo. Now, I know that's going to sound hypocritical because one of my boys that I love, Jesse, loves to do, but that's comedy. And Jesse's the owner like I am. It's like our guys eat first. When you come into my shop, if you don't have an appointment with me, whoever got there first gets a tattoo. So we're owners. We want our people to eat, if that makes sense. But that's what we need is professionals in the other areas of tattooing.
I am here because this is what I love, man, and this is a passion.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
And to be honest with you, I really want to bring the history back into it.
You got a good lighting on Eric. Perfect. That was rad.
That was a great interview, man.
Well, thank God. Things needed to be said.
You know what? And he actually made a comment during that interview where he was talking about an artist and he was saying, like, I wish people would be able to hear him speak, but they can't because he never got on film. But that really, like, kicked it into overdrive for me.
Well, that's a lot. You know, that's a regret. I definitely want to say that is don't take any tattooer for granted. I never had a chance to I had chances to get tattooed by Bob Shaw. I never took him up on it. I had a chance to get tattooed by Colonel Todd. Many chances. Didn't take him up on it. Rick Walters worked for me for 10 years. He did one tattoo on me. Tennessee Dave did a couple, but like Rick, one. You know what I mean? It was like we were just all enjoying each other's company and shit. And you blink. I was talking to Cliff Raven once a week. You know, every time I called his shop, Pierre would answer and be like, Baba, he doesn't want to talk about tattoo. I'm like, shut up. I want to buy a book. Because he had one of the Raven books at the time. But I just wanted more and more insight because I'm always hungry for tattoo history and knowledge. I never got a chance. I never got tattooed by Raven. I talked to Freddie about it. Like, I've been friends. I wrote a big 12-page article on Freddie Negretti way back in 2002, and I still haven't been tattooed by him.
I'm just not in a position to travel right now to do this.
Well, even still here, Crazy Eddie was one of my good friends. Didn't get tattooed by him. So I got tattooed by Stanley and Walter, but I never got tattooed by Freddie.
At this point,
Eddie, sorry.
Anybody that's local that's, you know, I'm trying to get.
Yeah, I just got tattooed by Mike Schweigart. I've known him for 25 fucking years, and I was just like, do this.
Mike's actually said he's going to do the show for me, so.
So I asked Mike to sign it, right? Because I have all these signatures, Gilmani, and all this stuff. And he goes, really? I go, right, Mike the Spike. His name that he just did is bigger than any other name besides my ex-wife's name on my neck.
Nice.
Like he just Mike the Spike, huge. I love that it's that fucking big where the word is huge.
He's such a good guy, and
he's an amazing guy.
Knowledge of the industry and the history is unbelievable. The only other person that I know that I've talked to at this point that's got the knowledge base is Lyle Hardy. That dude is a walking encyclopedia, man.
From the punk rock era.
We talked about that.
The original punk rock era, not my era. Mine was like 79 and up. His was like 76. That guy was a new wave tattoo. Is it still called New Wave?
Yeah. It's a cool little shop, man. Dude, I want to thank you so much for doing this for me, man. I'm glad I met you that night, and I'm glad you were receptive to doing this.
Bob Shaw Machine.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. If you like this video and hearing a bunch of bullshit from me and think that you're a tattooer or you want to be, click this fucking link. If you think I'm a dick,